My name is Barney McGee, and I am your host for tonight. Tonight, we have three very special guests with us today.
Miracle, Kate, Jenny.
Today, we will be talking about the subject of culture. Participants, why do you think it's so important to learn about culture?
First of all, when we talk about culture, we can feel it almost take part in every aspect in our daily life, which can also be explained by basic value of human being. According to Song Swatch, he views culture as the rich complex of meanings, beliefs, practice, values prevalent among the people in the society. It actually reminds me the first time when I left my home country, Vietnam, and came to Switzerland alone for my studying. I felt so lost at the beginning when everyone around me had totally different languages, perspectives, behaviors. It seemed like I would never get used to it or have any friends, but the professor and all my classmates actually helped me a lot at that time.
I understand your problem because this problem also happened to me too. I come from a very Canadian background. I was born in Taiwan, but I had an internship in Taiwan, so that was a very big cultural difference right there. During my internship, I found that the way they manage, the way they make decisions are very different. However, to some extent, I do agree with your definition of what culture is, which is a set of values. But when I read Shine's definition, based on his first article in 1984, he talks about culture not only as a value. Value is something that is learned. And then from this value, you learn behaviors. And then using these behaviors, you use them to solve problems. I agree with this one because I do agree that because of going back to my example of when I did my internship in Taiwan, the way that they solve problems was very different. In Canada, everybody goes in a group and we decide together what to do about this problem that we have. Whereas in Taiwan, I realized that everybody listens to one person that's sitting in the table. And then, so that's how I see the power difference.
That's very interesting, Jenny, because just like Shine's definition of culture theory, Schopenhauer's is quite similar. It is basically a shared system of meaning, which automates the process of having solutions for problems that we occur every day, such as the relationship between people, time, and nature. And as my background, I am half Japanese and half Taiwanese in America. I have witnessed firsthand about the encounters my parents had and all the struggles that they had along with it, such as them not being able to find a job very easily because their degrees in their country, even though they were top universities, are considered worthless in the United States. And the reason why it's important in the hospitality industry to understand culture is because an example would be like my mother, because she's working in the hospitality industry as an F&B manager. They employ her because they realize her abilities as a Chinese native, who is also very hardworking in comparison to her other American co-workers.
Actually, both of you mentioned about solving problem, but I don't really think so. I feel it's more interacting with other people. From many research that I found, despite the explosion of globalized economy increased rapidly the multinational corporations, and it's certain that the requirement of multicultural labor force has to grow quickly to support the economy too. And I actually have a lot of experience working in different cultures. I used to work in America, Australia, and Switzerland. And my hotel in America and Australia even provide the cultural training in one day for every new staff, so they can easily integrate to the team.
I agree with you on the part that it is a type of interaction, especially like you mentioned, in our society we have so much globalization. For Shine, what he defined it, in his fourth edition of his book, he defines it as not only in organization, which is the micro culture that we have to look at, and also the macro culture that you just mentioned about how we deal with people and the environment outside. What he says about microculture inside the organization is that we should put people, manage people in this way based on their occupation, their cultural views, ultimately, and their languages together. And then that way, it will be a lot more efficient. It will be easier to manage these people, and it would also be create synergy inside the organization as well. And so going back, this is between inside the organization of how it works. However, in hospitality field, we interact with our guests a lot. There's another theory by Rosenbaum and Messiah in 2011, where they talked about servicescape, which is something that Mary Jo Bittner, she talked about a lot in 1992. So basically what they say is the socially symbolic aspect. Any artifacts or any type of actions or any services or anything like that. This, for the guests, it creates more satisfaction for them, for the guests, because they feel right at home.
Thank you. And now I would like to explain the rules for tonight's game. Each of our participants will receive 1,000 points. Whoever has a criticism that they cannot support by themselves, they will lose 100 points. The winner of tonight's game will receive a brand new pair of glasses that allows you to see the culture of somebody immediately and allows you to understand them. So here is our first dilemma.
The manager decides to test the cashier's integrity. The cashier has been with the hotel 10 years and has had a flawless record. The manager slips a $50 bill in the register receipts. At the end of the day, the cashier shows a $5 overage. Upon questioning the cashier admits to you that he or she pocketed the $45 difference.
For this dilemma, my response is that I am very supportive of the manager for testing the employee. Because like, just to analyze a little bit about the manager, based on Shine's theory, is that Shine believes that there are three types of people that people believe in. It's either that humans are all born good, people are all born evil, or people are born with a clean slate. And so with this type of different idea of culture, this manager probably believes that everybody is evil. Let's go back to Hofstede's theory of power distance. Power distance for this one probably is because he wants more control. And so with more power distance, this reflects more of the Asian countries, for example. So going back to the situation with Shine's theory, this is probably because that it's a repeated behavior. And that's why, and because this is a repeated behavior that he needs to solve this problem, that's why he needed to test the employee like this. For me, I have this situation happen to me before. Not necessarily that I took the $45, it's just that I was cashier at this fast food store in Canada, and my manager, he tested me by slipping a $20 bill inside the cash register. And at the end of the day, what he asked me was how many of each things was sold and approximately how much money did we make, and etc. so on and so forth. So he quizzed me on that, and at the end of the day, he did realize that he still had the $20 left over.
Okay. Yeah, so, well, it actually reminds me about Edward Hall's work when he is mentioned in a high and low context a society, that in high context society, relationship build slowly, depend on trust and are stable. So like, but in a low context, it's quite different that, relationship build quickly and also end quickly. In this case, I kind of disagree with the manager, because if I was the staff, I kind of feel really uncomfortable to work with someone actually don't trust me.
I understand. I mean, if I were the staff, I honestly wouldn't have taken that tip, $45. I would honestly just report it to my manager and say, oh, we have $50 over. But I can understand at the same time why that particular cashier may have taken that money for himself, and that can relate to Aldofer's ERG theory of existence, relatedness, and growth. If any one of these is not fulfilled, particularly the existential part, because it's the lowest, that needs like money and food and shelter. If he doesn't have enough money to gain for himself or for his family, then maybe he results himself into doing something like embezzlement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here is our next dilemma.
In the US, providing small talk is a way to build professional relationship. The manager insists that the intern talks to the Japanese businessmen who are enjoying their solitude. Understanding the cultural difference, the intern is hesitant to disturb the businessman.
Japanese society is much more reserved than the American one, and in this particular dilemma with the Japanese intern, that actually happened to me. So that's why my manager, he actually wanted me to talk with the two Japanese businessmen at the hotel. And I tried to explain to him that even though I am American born and raised, but I was more raised as a Japanese in the household. Therefore, I understand how Japanese businessmen may feel if a stranger comes up to them and tries to give small talk just for a professional relationship. And the concept is specifically exemplifies Dr. Trompenar's diffuse versus specific cultural dimension. And Americans are well known to be very specific because they believe in having strangers into their public life, which is quite big in comparison with their private life. Whereas in diffuse nations like Japan, their private circle is much bigger than their public circle.
Yes, so actually, this problem reminds me about Edward Hall's work again. He's mentioned in his high and low context society. In some culture, people actually don't have a lot of communication, but it still contains a lot of meanings. But in another culture, that communication is very important. It's like build up relationship, interacting people. So in this case, to be honest, I have to agree with the manager because actually this case for hospitality. So communication is actually very important. So the manager just want to, the staff to interacting people.
I agree with you, but I actually agree with both of them, saying that the Japanese student is also correct and also the manager is correct. So why I agree with the Japanese student for not talking to them is because Asian cultures tend to be more suppressing with their feelings. They like their peace, they like their cause. And so this reminds me of Hofstede's theory of femininity versus masculinity. And so Japan, Asian cultures, they tend to be more feminine, whereas the American culture tends to be more masculine. And so, but however, I will agree with you by saying that the manager is correct because based on the case study, there is suggestions that says that Japan is moving towards more masculine cultures. So maybe the intern could have tried to communicate with the Japanese guests to some extent. Well, of course, the age of the guests also depends too. But like you said, communication is very important in hospitality.
Here is our last dilemma.
The manager of a restaurant inside the hotel divides the tips earned by the staff members after their shift. Many employees complain that it is not fair for them as they have earned their own tips due to their hard work.
Yeah, so the last job that I worked in Sheraton Hotel in Sydney, our F&B team always faces the problem of sharing gratuity when there's an Australian man who's one of the best service staff in our restaurant, and he determines that he's the one who gets the tip directly from the customer, and he decided himself to share it for the co-workers who help him during the service. But the managers always collect all the service charges and share it equally for everyone at the end. Based on SWOT theory, this belongs to embeddedness and autonomy. When individuals encouraged to follow intellectuals and own idea independently, this staff would like to have the independent action and choice to share his own money. Yeah, but a lot of managers believe that every employee should give back the gratuity for them because this is fair to divide it equally at the end. So their view is more embeddedness. Based on SWOT theory, people are viewed as entities which are embedded in collectivities. In my opinion, actually, at the end, I always give back the tip for the manager because I feel like we work in the same team, so we help each other, we work together, so we should have the same gratuities. Then people sometimes always share unequally, and they even fight for it.
Now, I personally agree with the fact that service staff is upset that they're not making their own tips instead of relying on tip pooling, which they're doing right now. And Dr. Hofstede and Dr. Trompenars, they both have quite similar views when it comes to individualistic and collectivist dimension. And they both assert that in individualistic societies, they don't rely on a company culture, whereas they believe that whatever earnings that they make should be kept for themselves because they worked at it. And another thing is that in Hofstede's cultural tool, he can actually identify Australia and America in comparison with their individualistic index. So what I found was that they were both practically the same, 90 and 91 respectively. So that's why, as an American, I can understand why the staff doesn't feel happy about having this collective method.
Okay, and I agree with you that all of the employees, they should keep their tips for themselves, because after a good day's hard work, you should be able to keep whatever hard work that you get, which reflects the theory of Schwartz between hedonism and also achievement, which is what I would like to focus on. Because achievement is like a self-realization, and hedonism, because of this self-realization, you create pleasure. And so, going back to why this happens, we'll go to Adolphus theory and Maslow's theory of hierarchy of needs. And so, between these hierarchy of needs, because we're already satisfied with whatever we have, we just need to have more motivation on our own spiritual self, in a way. And so, like in between self-achievement and self-realization and things like that. And especially in, like it was mentioned, Australia is a very individualistic culture, and really other than the North Americans, I mean, it's not necessarily that you get tips. So of course you should, the employees should keep the tips to themselves. I have worked in both industries where, in two examples. One of them, they did tip pooling, and the other one, which is, you keep it to yourself. Tip pooling, that one was because the organization was small. And so everybody worked together. The people at the back kitchen, they couldn't get any tips. Whereas the people in front, they tend to get the most tips. So that I can understand where the tip pooling comes from. But however, since every server, they work hard individually, which is a different environment, which is also where I have worked on, they should keep the tips for themselves.
Looks like our contestants are all tied tonight, which means they will all receive the prize.
That's all the time that we have, folks. I would like to thank our guests tonight, Nicole, Kate, Judy, and stay tuned with us for the next episode of What Would You Do? Thank you and good night.